animator versus the machine.
On today's podcast, we have a very special guest. He is the studio director and head of production of PIP Animation Studios, to be specific. You may not have heard the studio outside of Ottawa, but you've definitely seen all the shows they worked on, from Ripping Friends in the 90s to Katie and Orby, to Cat in the Hat, Tom and Jerry in the 2000s, and they even worked on feature films like Pirates Passage for CBC. So today I want to welcome David Fortier. Hey, David.
Hey, nice to be here. Thanks for asking me to be a part of your podcast.
Hey, thanks for joining me. Did I miss anything for your history of PIP quick?
No, that's pretty good. PIP started in 1998 as an ink and paint and compositing studio when animation was still being done overseas. So, quick history. I started in animation back in the mid 80s. Everything was done on paper and acetate. So you had key animators, in-betweeners, and cleanup artists. That would all go into a photocopy machine, get put on acetate, and then opakers would be painting all of this material and getting it ready for camera. Very expensive process. Took about 400 people to do a half-hour show in the 3-month period, going through the various stages. So overseas became a go-to place for that dollar figure. So where we're making, I guess, minimum wage, it was probably like $4 or $5 an hour back then. But somebody overseas could make a really good living. It's not like these people were starving. They could make a really good living making half that in their countries, China, Philippines, places like that. So all that work was going overseas as a money saver. So when we started up PIP, and PIP's owned by Dulcie Clark, our founder and CEO, when she started PIP, she wanted to help fill that niche of this new digital era. So companies we worked for, we're still sending all of their paperwork overseas. They do layout and posing, go overseas, get completed. Then they would ship back all these drawings, approximately 18,000 drawings per 22 minutes. We'd scan them all. We'd digitally ink and paint them. We'd composite them with the backgrounds, do any kind of visual effects, move on from there. So we did that for a few years. And then our first full animation production was Carl Squared. So we started working on that. We did it soup to nuts from the concept designs all the way through to mastering. And our client, Portfolio Entertainment, was the ones who supplied the scripts and dialogue. And we've more or less kept that going all these years. So PIP is now over 25 years old. We'll be 26 in March. And what that digital era did is it kind of made a level playing field for animation companies around the planet. They all needed they all needed the hardware, they all needed the software, and then there was the hourly wage that became the big decider. But once you have animation happening in the Philippines and then now in India and in China for many, many years, they developed such a strong industry. They're like, yeah, we're not working for $4 a day anymore. You have to pay us more. And so prices were already going up overseas. And then the software and the hardware became a bit of a leveler for us in the playing field. But in addition to that, with, in particular, the South Asia, they have their own viewership. They don't need our shows. They don't need our Katie and Orby because they have all of their other things. So they really just said, okay, if we're going to start losing work, we're just going to be producing this for ourselves. Of course, everybody knows anime, which has been around for many, many years. It's funny, I grew up on the Quebec side, and we were watching anime when I was a little kid. And I'm going to be 59, so it came to Quebec really early on.
Ils sont 5 jeunes et fous.
So anyways, with all of that stuff, I've been in the industry for about 35 years working with PIP. Again, now we're currently doing full animation. And yeah, we've got 2 features under our belt. Animation has also allowed a variety of other fields. So when I speak with students, there's things like if you go to your app for your bank, there's probably animations in there. Sure, there's all the little games and everything that we play, but we've done medical animations for Heart Institute and places like that. We at PIP, we've redone all of the St. John Ambulance illustrations for their book, but also they had to go online with their courses when COVID hit. So we created all of their courses online in animation. So animation isn't just for television anymore. It's really everywhere we can think of. And I mean, I think it's great. I graduated as a fine artist and did not necessarily intend to be working in animation, but they were hiring painters. So I became a painter, and 35 years later, I'm still here.
Perfect. So the question I ask everyone on this podcast is like a warm-up question is, what is your definition of AI?
So I guess I'm more of a clinical thought on that. AI is something that, of course, it's man-made. We program it, but then from that point on, it can learn on its own. It can go on its. It can do just about anything we can do. It's meant to mimic the Homo sapien brain, so that it's free to go in thoughts all over the place. Unlike machine learning, like there's a lot of people think machine learning is AI, and it's really not. It's a chess game that you play against. I have my little Kasparov digital chess game here, and it can only do chess, but it can't drive our car. It can't do any of these other kinds of things. So when we get into AI, if it's a matter of it needs to be able to experience something, process it, get a conclusion, and move on from there. So it's so much more than we have currently. I know AI, the fear of AI is out there, and probably rightly so, since 1984 with Terminator.
Sure,
it's been in everybody's minds. But that's one of those things where, can it be a beneficial element? Can it be detrimental? But I think it's like all tools, like everything from the wheel and gunpowder, and they all have beneficial sides to them. In particular with AI, if AI could, if you could stand in front of it and it scans you and and it'll tell you exactly what's wrong with you. Well, you've got a little spot on your lung, but you don't have to worry about it because that's a this, that, and the other thing. But your liver, on the other hand, has a lesion that you should be concerned about.
Yeah.
Then AI is a good thing. Does that take jobs away from people? Absolutely, because now all these doctors, you don't need doctors anymore. But I think you will always need the personal side of things when it comes to AI. I think they can be, and I think we should be developing them to be hand in hand.
Right. So it's no secret that it's getting harder and harder to make animated shows with the cost of everything going rising, but also the demand has like increased tenfold. With like you can watch everything from television to Netflix to anything on your phone. People just wanted everything. Like there's like CBC has CBC television, CBC web, CBC. They have their own app.
Gem.
They have everything. So some view AI as like the golden ticket. Like this could help alleviate with like things like image generative softwares like Stable Diffusion or Dolly or Midjourney. Some people say like, oh, we can use this for pre-production or development phase. We're not talking about that because that's a whole other thing. But as someone who's been in the business, who's seen these trends of transitions from like the introduction of 3D software in the 90s to the digital phase of Harmony and Adobe Flash, Do you see any parallels between this AI crisis, or does this feel new?
No, I think it's totally paralleled, and I think it goes way back. If you think about when nobody today in our city pretty much owns a horse, but back in the day, horses were everything. Cars got introduced. People lost their jobs because you didn't need farriers anymore. You didn't need stables downtown. You didn't need all these kinds of things. But so they either closed their business, went and did something else, or adapted their business. I remember in the 80s when it was towards we were just finishing, I was working at Hinton and we had just finished the Nutcracker Prince feature film with Keith Sutherland and Megan Fallows. And there was these other companies doing this. Oh, did you hear about 3D? Oh, 3D's coming. You guys are obsolete. So there was that big panic about, when like we're looking at the Pixar stuff and all these things. And at first, like if you have the opportunity to pick up the Pixar shorts and watch them, they're horrible. But I remember back in the day being blown away by them. Sure. Like, oh man, look at that baby! It's so realistic. And now, if one of those things was in my house, I'd throw it out as quickly as I could. They're quite well. They're not to the polish that they are today, for sure.
No, they're of their time, right?
That's the exactly. Thing. So with everybody pushing 3D back then, when Dulce decided to open PIP, that was one of the big things: is why are you going to 2D? It's dead, but it isn't dead. So there's still a lot further to go. And with 3D, that was one of the things I think made 3D very approachable to mainstream was, but the software does most of it. And then you could just do everything through motion capture. So you had things like the Backyardigans, which my kids loved, and I was like, it just has a certain look that we could do so much better in 2D. That's come a lot further now. I mean, you look at things like Pirates of the Caribbean. Is that an animated show or a live action show? It's both.
It's a hybrid, right?
It's very much a hybrid. And I think most high-end pictures are always going to be hybrids moving forward. Yep. So in that case, where is AI beneficial? So if you have, do you want to generate a crowd of orcs running across the plains, or do you really need to hire 30,000 extras to do that?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even for simplistic things like Davy Jones as the octopus type face. Yes, that's being animated, but a lot of that's going through interpolation and machine learning how tentacles work. So if he moves, the tentacles have to move a certain way, and then you put muscles into them, and then you can go in and adjust and tweak. But those are all things that I think enhance the quality. But I don't know if we as a people want to have something that's 100% generated by AI. I don't know if it's there. And I know AI can, its big thing is it can compute so quickly. So it can do whatever, 10,000 things in a second. So can it present a white canvas with a red dot on it and hang that in the National Gallery? Maybe.
Yeah.
But could it do a dolly? I don't know, maybe. But how much does it have to get through before it can produce something like that? And because it's all programmed on existing material, where does it go? Like, you need a new person. You need new minds in there, bringing it new life and helping it evolve.
Right, because like that's currently what's going on with its the AI art that's out there right now. Is it now referencing itself, and so now it's having these issues of just redundancies of like, oh, now it's just producing the same things because it's referencing not human works, but now AI works. So it's like, oh,
it falls into a loop.
Yeah. So then, do you see a place for AI in studios, or is it just like a niche thing, like augmented reality or VR or? that type of thing?
I think there always will be. It's like computers. Again, back in the day, I remember when we got our first computers, and they were those Apple bricks with the keyboard was attached in the 3-inch floppy, and then somebody got a 5-inch floppy, and you're like, well, how come they get the new computer? but I mean, today I work in Word and spreadsheets and Producer, which is our tracking software, and we work in all these other kinds of things that have definitely helped simplify the process, but also make it more manageable so that, again, you can keep the cost down. Animation is an industry, so it's an audio visual group of artists come together, and they create their wares that are seen by the masses through our televisions and other types of screens. So in the end, it's always a business. But I think you can draw the line somewhere where, we do it with clothing. This cheap clothing was made over here, and these people are being treated poorly, and their factory caught fire and then fell down, and so many of those people were injured and whatever. So we don't buy clothing from them anymore. We're doing that with food. More people are buying organic. I think we get to a point where do we want fast food all the time, or do we want a nice home cooked meal every once in a while?
Right.
Yeah.
So that was my thing, was like, the whole point of this podcast is I'm trying to figure out, where's that line? Where's the line between one side is an asset and the other side is just automation, where it's like you're taking away from it. And it's like, okay, where's this line that we're trying to figure out? So with talking about that is, what do you feel are the ethical concerns and responsibilities for studios to use AI? Like, where should they disclose that, like, oh yes, we are using AI? Should it be,
Yeah, that's a good question, and I because it's a lot. It's deeper and it's multifaceted. So,
right. Yeah.
My working in animation for so long, a lot of people don't even know where this industry lives. Is it all overseas? Is it all down in California? Well, no, there's 6 major studios and a dozen plus more minor studios here in Ottawa, and people are like, "What? Like, well, where are you guys?" Well, we're all over the city. Um, so I think in a lot of cases we have to think of, well, what's fair to employees. So we have minimum wages in Canada for a reason. It actually just went up a couple of days ago. There's minimum. Yeah, it went from 15.50 to, I think, 16.65 or something like that.
I think something like that, yeah.
So that's there for a reason, because you want people to be employed, you want them to be able to make a good living. So if, again, with the computers help things out, but if you have AI now generating the vast majority of it, it could be the writing, it could be the composing as well. I was listening to this thing on CBC, and they had a song composed and sung by AI in the voice and talents of Amy Winehouse.
Oh,
And
yes.
I thought, wow, that kind of sounds like her. And okay, maybe the song is okay, but I think as a people, we need to decide what we want and what we don't want. There's a company that came out with a series. This was 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago. We sing in the car all the time. I love learning lyrics. I'm always singing. And this song starts to come on, and my daughter and I start to sing 2 different songs because it sounded that much alike. So I look it up, generated by the same company. So all of a sudden that AI was like, well, this is a really good beat, and this is a good place for the harmony to come in, and it was almost the same song with different words put to it. So that could become very much an issue with visually generated AI. Anime has that certain look and feel to it for cost-saving measures, for the most part, for cost-saving measures. So is anime better than anything else out there? It's different. It's another thing. So I think on a moral sense, if the AI is not overshadowing the creativity of the people involved, again, from writers through to composers and, final mastering, animators, everybody in between, and it's enhancing their abilities, then that's one thing, but it shouldn't replace their abilities.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree.
I think so. That's the moral part, I think, is most important.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. So at the end of the day, like, animation is a business, and the AI genie bottle is, or whatever analogy you want to use, is out of the bag, and it's here to stay. But what I find people tend to forget is we've had like small forms of AI used in this, like the animation software we use all the time, from like Harmony and Adobe Flash, where they have the in between, like the tween function is a form of artificial intelligence, where it analyzes the 2 points and tries to determine which is the fastest, depending on where you put the peg, or not the peg, but the slider. And then it's your job to actually animate it versus letting the computer just go A to B. Or you have Harmony's lip sync function, where it can analyze the sound file and give you the approximate mouth shapes based on what the library you have. Granted, it's usually pretty shitty because it doesn't understand lip syncs,
but that'll improve. That'll only get
that's
better.
The thing. So my question is, if AI can lower the cost and possibly help make artists stronger by allowing them to focus more on specific scenes, or better mentorship, would it be foolish to not use these technologies, or would relying on these softwares dilute and stagnate the talent because there's not that bar?
Yeah, that's true. So with like you're saying, with auto in-betweening and things like that, it's sort of doing what we're asking it to do, and for it to improve, you need a programmer to go in there and bang away at the keyboard to make things even more fluid. Like the Harmony 22 has just incredible features, but so does Maya, and so does Flash Animate. We were a Flash studio for many, many years. So I guess it's one of those. I've lost your question. Can you ask that again?
Yeah, no problem.
And feel free to edit this out or leave it in. I don't care.
I'd leave it in. It's all fine. My question is more, by using these big technologies that help make things faster, lower costs, and possibly help us get better as artists at what we're doing, would it be foolish not to use it? Or by relying on so much, you're just now becoming so dependent on it that you lose that skill set of
so I think there's that balance in there. So animation's an industry, like any industry. The cheaper you can produce it for the best return is the way to go. So broadcasters want to give you whatever it is, $100,000 per episode, but you need $300,000 per episode, then you have to go find these other investors. So anywhere you can save money, the industry will tend to go that way. Again, fast food versus organically grown. Sure. So like there's a variety of cost saving methods. When COVID hit, everybody had to go home, and all of the actors, like all production and everything, shut down. So the government said, well, you know what? Animation is an essential service, so you guys have to keep working. Like, what? how are we supposed to keep working? We can't go into the studio. You'll fine us $3,000 a day. So we quickly learned, and this is like right across the board, from I would definitely across Canada, all the offices or all the studios quickly recompose themselves as virtual studios, and most of us are still the same way. Like I'm working from home today. I'm in my office in the basement. So when you have a studio that has, say, 25,000 square feet, and they're paying $30,000, or sorry, $30 a square foot on that, Well, if you can drop that down to a 3,000 square foot office where your mainframes are and your administration people are, that's a huge savings. So right there, I would be surprised if studios go back to fully in person. So when it comes to software, why are we using Harmony over Animate? We used Animate for many, many years, and then Harmony it gained, and they were really putting in the effort to make it a better software for animators. So we adopted that. If AI comes in and does something similar, and I'm sure it will, then it would be adopted. But I think it's always with that. It's always a balance. It has to be a balance between the two. When you have AI coming in, like you had mentioned, do you then give scenes to some senior people that gives them time to do that? You might be able to build a very strong pipeline with fewer people relying on more of these tools. But I think the caveat is also you're only as strong as the programmer, and how good can the program be until you get into actual AI, and then it doesn't need people anymore and it's doing its own thing.
Yeah.
So when 3D came out, I had mentioned the Backyardigans, but there's a whole bunch of them. They looked and moved the same way, and they were all motion capture. And then, we'll introduce some people back into it to try to tweak it a little bit. And then you get things like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, which is outstanding.
Yeah.
But it's still all based on the individuals doing all of that work. Like Gollum was designed on paper. Yep. And then he was created in a 3D program and tweaked and built and whatever, and then lit. And then after Andy Serkis did all the motion capture, then animators went in and they tweaked it all again. And then the lighting department came in. And then Peter Jackson said, that's a good start. Let's give it a few more passes.
Yeah.
So it was all the individual input into those, not and the computers were just used as a tool. And I think that's by far the way we should continue to go. Whether we do or not, I don't know. I'm sure there'll be some companies that are just there for profit. But
sure,
I think the majority of studios want the individual input, what each person can contribute to the story, from interpreting the script into a storyboard, from interpreting the storyboard or timing out the storyboard into an animatic, then animators interpreting that into how I'm going to make the characters move, where I put the accents. I think that's what makes the shows what they need to be, and it's why animation's so popular.
Yeah, I think you brought up, you nailed I think you hit it right on the head, where it's like in the beginning, 3D, at least in television, looked all the same. It was like this weird, like everything felt underwater and everything was like moving kind of similarly. And it wasn't until
no gravity.
Like, you had these outliers like Gollum or Pixar that like showed you like, oh no, you don't have to do it this way. This is how we do it. And then everyone copies that. And even recently, like you had, like everyone was copying Pixar. Like you had all these clones. And you're like, oh, okay. And then you had something like the new Spider-Man movie, like the Into the Spider-Verse or those, where it's like, it shows you like, or even before that, it was the Peanuts movie. Where it showed you that, like, where you can do cartoony, but it's still 3D, and you're like, holy crap, this looks great, and it feels like a cartoon, and it's flat and 3D at the same time. You're like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
But I think you hit it right on the head. That it just you need those programs to show you like things can be possible, and then you need these innovators to be like, all right, we're gonna change it up, or this is how we should approach it through artistic vision and process.
Yeah, they can be used to improve and bring it to a next level. Arcane, like when Arcane first came out, it was like, wow, it's hand painted 3D. A lot of stuff in there, computer interpolation from here to there to there. But then having I hate using the word human, having that personal touch of people coming in and tweaking all of those things, like Jinx gets hit in the face, and then slowly over multiple scenes, that line starts to come into her cheek. So by the time she gets back to the layer, her eye is swollen. You're like, wow. Now, could AI do that? Maybe, but would it think to do that? I don't know.
Yeah. I like as AI stands right now, I'd be like, no, that takes like a human to be like, no, you got to think of this creatively, be like, no, this is what you have to do. Because it doesn't, at least right now, AI doesn't think, it just does what it's told.
That's right.
And when it does what it's told, it's very straightforward. It can't think outside the box. It just does whatever you say it is, and it can be very specific.
Yeah, exactly. And it still requires people to be going in and improving the AI and recoding it and getting it to stop focus on its own work, but now pick up this, pick up that, go into other areas. Like, could it have come up with Arcane? Or imagine if you could do an animated feature like Picasso's work. That could be terrible. It could be really cool.
Yeah, it could be really either or. Yeah.
yeah, like the movie that came out about oh gosh, what is his name? A painter who cut off his ear, Vango. So the film Vango. When I first saw that, I'm like, it looks like they filmed it, and then they just went over in Photoshop and painted everything over. And I mean, I did some of that back in the day when you could filter with Photoshop. And then I found out, no, each frame was an oil painting, and they painted everything and then filmed those things separately. I thought, wow, like the effort that went into that. Do I think it's worth it? I don't think so, because there was like 150 animators painting every frame. It was an experiment, and maybe AI would think of that and in a millisecond go, nope. Yeah. But it might also get stuck in that loop and then just tell people this is what you're going to watch from now on. Exactly. And I think we get tired of things very quickly. Toy Story was a beautiful movie, and you go back and you watch it now and you're like, eeh. And then
some things are a little rough. You're like, okay.
It's aged. And then when you had things like Star Trek and whatever, who were starting to use more of the feature quality type visuals, and now you look at it back now and you're like, what? It looks aged. So will any of these new Star Wars series in 10, 15 years, we'll probably look back and go, I don't know.
Like, oh, isn't that campy? You're like, okay.
yeah. I know it'll have a dated look to it, and that's where I think it requires the artists to be able to constantly be enhancing what they're working with. So sure, if there's a new tool, absolutely, they can embrace that tool and make it, whatever the visuals come out of it, they can make them their own, as opposed to just letting the tool dictate, because then we get jello-y type animation with no gravity and everything's very floaty.
Yeah. Well, that's been interesting. Thanks so much, Dave. It was great. Loved it.
Good. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, that's it. I want to thank our guests for contributing on our journey so far, and I want to thank you, the phantom listeners, for hearing us ramble around the water cooler. Come check in next time as we talk more about the subject of AI in the animation industry. Let's find out together. Don't forget, keep your eyes on the horizon.
Goodbye.